Stick around for this episode of the Tune Pack Podcast, where our guest will be John Massari.
Hello, everyone. Stick around.
Welcome to the Tune Pack Podcast. I'm your host, the punk rock pop, Lee Pierce. And on today's show, we are lucky enough to be joined by John Massari. John, can you take a minute to introduce yourself?
Well, Lee, thank you for having me. My name is John Massari. I am a person who creates music, and I've been creating music since I was a little boy. And now I am not a little boy, and I'm still creating music and loving every minute of it. You probably know me, if you know me at all. You probably know me as the composer for Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Amongst all the thousands of things I've worked on, literally, that's what everyone remembers me for. And I'm so proud that it's finally found its audience. It's a movie that just brimming over with creativity and imagination. And when it first came out, it really wasn't well received. I was very proud of it while I was working on it afterwards, and I kept the faith. And finally, little by little, it found its audience. And I think in 2012 or 2010, I was introduced to the audience, and so it was very inspiring. It was very inspiring to connect with the fans of the movie and to realize that they actually recognized the role that the music had in the movie. So, and I've done all sorts of episodic television. Way back in the day, I worked as an assistant composer to David Rose, who did Little House on the Prairie, and I worked on Heart to Heart, all these episodic TV shows in the early 80s. And then I got out of that and went into independent film, where I thrived. And there was a time in the 90s I did corporate commercials. When I say corporate commercials, I mean IBM, commercials that would play during the Super Bowl and all that sort of stuff, and that was a lot of fun. And then I got back into doing horror music scores for a variety of different genres of horror, and now to this day, I'm creating my own music. I started a project called JM, and I'm working with very, very talented independent artists, namely Mad Lucas of 666, also Adam Gomez of the Dickies, my very good friend and composer, very talented musician Jonathan Padilla, and Dan Serper, our bass player. Our bass player switches out, kind of like in Spinal Tap, where the drummers would explode. Bass players, we switch out the bass players, but I usually play bass. Jonathan plays bass. One of my favorite bass players that we have playing with is a guy named Darrell Freeman, who just has this melodic style to him. So we're making music. I'm very blessed to be working with Neil Avron, from a producer and mixer for Linkin Park, who somehow thinks my music is okay for him to work on, which I'm very honored. And so that's where I'm at today. And I just sent off a piece of music to be mixed, and we're looking forward to the end of this year to come out with our volume one. At the moment we're just releasing singles, and that's what it is. So we're here. I'm here making music, and I really appreciate you having me on here to babble on about what I'm doing with my life these days.
Well, it's been great. We were introduced from Carrot Top from Radioactive Chicken Heads, a mutual friend of ours. Amazing person, amazing band. Please go check them out.
Yes.
But it's always fun because I I'm pushing 50, so I grew up. I remember when Killer Clowns came out. I always loved the schlock, stuff like Killer Clowns, Killer Tomatoes, anything Troma. I loved that. Guar. I mean, I
Mhm.
want everything just big in my face.
Mhm.
And so I grew up with the movie, and everyone I knew, the friend group, everybody knew it. So like when you're telling me like, wow, nobody knew the movie, I'm like, who the fuck were you talking to? Because everybody I know loves the movie. So, and it's neat seeing it now because like it was instantly a cult classic just because it was a great film. The score, I mean, it's incredible just top to bottom. It's so fun. And seeing that it's finally getting the credit because I think people are looking for the fun, weird art more nowadays. It's a little more accepted nowadays than it was 40 plus years ago.
Right.
It was everything was way more button up. It was bad B movie, blah blah blah. Like give me those over something out of Hollywood any day.
Right. Something with imagination, something genuine, you know. It's interesting. You said you mentioned your age and you caught it when you were a little kid. I have run into so many fans that said they weren't allowed to watch the movie until they were teenagers. My own nephew, my sister said, this might be too scary for you. And then so my nephew says, Mom won't let me watch it until I'm 9. And then when he did, he goes, Dad, he was he said, Uncle Johnny, it's not that it's scary, it's just really weird. And then
I never
I've had people tell me they watched it since they were 4 years old as well, and I can identify with that. When I was a kid, my mom used to say, "I don't want you watching Star Trek. It's too crazy. They have rocks talking and people with funny faces. I don't like this." And so I used to sneak away and watch it at my grandma's house with my aunt.
Yeah, and because it's not a scary movie or gory or a bunch
Yeah.
of nudity. It's not anything like that. It's just a weird movie. I mean, a
Yes,
little not
bizarre,
it's not even
creepy, and scary.
yeah, and because of the amazing score, it's not like it's got the jump scares like all the movies rely on now. They
Right.
don't rely on ambiance and things, building momentum. It's always that everything's quiet and some jumps out at you to scare the shit out of
Hmm.
you. And that movie didn't have that, so yeah, it was never really that scary or anything like that. But yeah, I was lucky enough to get to see it when I was young, and grow up appreciating it more and more. And I talked the other day like I haven't watched it in a couple years, and I'm like, you know what? I want to watch it now. Now, first time I really truly paid attention to the score and realized it made the movie better. It really did. And as a guy in this industry, I should pay more attention to what's all going on. But I can only pay attention to this much at a time. So I kind of
Right.
watched it a few times, but it really did give me a new appreciation for the movie now.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
So
so wonderful that it's found its audience, and there's all these toys and merchandise that have been released on it. I mean, I went to school with Chris Young, who did Hellraiser, and he that came out. I want to say 2 years before Killer Clowns, maybe a year before Killer Clowns. And I said, "Gosh, Chris, you were so lucky because your movie was in. I mean, I saw your movie twice. It was in the movie theater for at least 6 weeks, and there were lines around the block, people wanting to see it. Killer Clowns only got like a day and a half in the movie theaters at any given city, and they took the same print around, and over a period of the summer, people got to see it in their various theater markets. So it never really, and everywhere it would play, it would get good reviews. And so by the time people, this is back in the day before you can get instant news, right? So you had to read the article and decide, hey, next week, let's all go see this movie. And so when people would come back after the reviews came out, it was gone. You know, I think if it just played for another 2 weeks, I think we could have easily done a series of Killer Clowns movies. For sure.
oh, absolutely, because yeah, it's such a different world now because it's you got more than one copy because everything's digital.
Right.
now. And so, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's, well, first you had to find an article, because how many people are reading the paper looking for an article anyways? It's not like
Hmm.
they were on their phones scrolling and came across it. You'd have to seek out media to read reviews and find out about movies.
Right.
So yeah, it's amazing looking back how little the release, how small the release was. That it's cool that it was still able to be as successful as it was, because it could have just been one that it got thrown in a, one theater failed, they threw it in a can, and nobody ever heard of the movie again.
Correct. Correct. And another thing behind it that's a driving force is the Kyoto brothers. You had this creative trio of musicians, excuse me, of filmmakers that were basically, they wanted to do the movie that they wanted to see when they were kids. Just think of how genuine that is. It's like, I'm not going to make a movie to impress people. I'm going to make a movie to satisfy my inner child, you know. And
That's
I think
awesome.
that comes out in the movie. That does come out in the movie.
I think it does. I just had one of my favorite bands on, Gas Station Boner Pills. They're called. They're a comedy punk band,
Hmm.
and it's fun because like they do fun music. There's nothing serious about them. They're incredibly talented, but
Hmm.
like literally they're writing jokes to make their friends laugh, and their friends are the other band members. So
Right.
when you see an artist, whether it's an author or a filmmaker or a painter or a musician, and getting to just make music for themselves, or like, this is because my buddy I know is going to like this song, the best art gets created when
Hmm.
people are just like, I want to have fun and I want to do what I wanted to see. Like, I didn't get to see movies like this growing up, so I'm going to make these movies.
Hmm.
And it does come out. You can see the people's passion in it, and I just love seeing that.
Well, I was the movie Terrifier came out, and I know I'm acquainted with Paul Wiley, and I says, I love that little riff that you have. I mean, it's like in Killer Clowns. I had a riff that I made for the movie that I actually wrote when I was 16 for my band, and they thought it was like too jazzy. And actually, the song was supposed to be about my grandmother, the Killer Clown riff. So it just sat in the drawer, and then it became part of the Killer Clown universe. And then I just recently did a song called "Do I Know You," that has the DNA of the Killer Clowns riff, but it's changed obviously over the years. But I told Paul Riley, I go, what locked me into the Terrifier movie, which by the way, if that was released in the 80s, that would have probably been a banned movie, and it would have to be
So
discovered years and years later because it was so completely brutal. But I says, that little riff that you have, that simple little riff, really makes a difference than just like, I'm going to come up with some crazy sounds. It's like it's a motif. I say riff. It's a riff, a motif. It's kind of like a fragment of a melody, and it makes things work. And I was glad to get that piece of music that I did when I was 16 into Killer Clowns.
that's awesome. So when did you? Because you say you tried writing music for a band back when you were 16. When did you decide to start writing for television and movies and stuff like that, or did it kind of naturally happen, or like what got you down that road?
Well, it basically when I was about 9 or 10, I discovered that that's actually a profession that someone can do, is create music that will be in movies. Like I used to like uh, watching TV series like Mannix and Mission Impossible and Star Trek, and I was really attracted to the scores. Those scores were very defined and delineated, and and also, I guess for better or for worse, I realized that I'm not going to get any support from my family unless I can apply for a job somewhere. And let me tell you, for boys and girls, the media industry for artists is very, very, you have to be able to take a lot. You have to have a very, very tough skin because you know what you think is going to be absolutely brilliant and wonderful, people are going to pick apart and try to change because everyone wants to put uh, their fingerprints on everything. So I had to deal with that for a number of years. I worked for other composers, and so it was that's how I got into film music. But in my heart, I always wanted to like do what I'm doing right now, which is like my music. And I remember I was doing I was working. We were recording at the record plant in L.A. and we were recording. For some reason, all the studios were booked, and we had to do an episode of Little House on the Prairie with a string orchestra and everything at the record plant. And next door to us was this thumping boo sound. Anyways, it turned out to be Aerosmith. They were cutting guitar overdub tracks, and they were so loud. It was coming through, resonating down the hallways, and they had to ask me, "Would you mind like taking a break for 3 hours while we record a string orchestra?" And they said, "Oh, no problem." And they came in and they sat in, and I was felt so embarrassed. I go, "Oh my God, Steven Tyler," and then whatever guitar player from the band was there, and I'm going, "Oh gosh, I want to do what they're doing. I don't want to sit here with you know." I was in the booth, like monitoring what like if there's any problem with the orchestra. There was nothing happening. Those Little House on the Prairie sessions used to just fly by, and sometimes we'd finish early. But anyways, so that's one of my early things where I think, gosh, my life choice. I'm kind of embarrassed by being here, but that was my job. But they were impressed. They were like thrilled. They were like just listening in on musicians watching other musicians work. Sort of. But anyways, so I got into that, and from time to time there would be a very satisfying project I would work on. One of them was Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Another movie, which is a very obscure cult movie, is called The Wizard of Speed and Time, and that had a lot of stop motion animation in it, and that's I love that. You're working with people that are very, very creative and very, very innovative.
And first the Aerosmith story. That's great. That's going to be a fun trivia. I'm going to have to pop off on somebody. Tell me the tie between Aerosmith and Little House on the Prairie,
Oh well.
and no one except maybe you will get that. That's just awesome. That's really I love those little fun That's what I love about this show is I get to hear people's favorite stories
Mhm.
because there's really nothing better than having a good story to tell. And usually our friends have heard the same fucking stories 100 times, so having
Right.
somebody new that's really cool. But and like you said though, you got especially in any type of creative industry, whether you're a writer, a painter, a filmmaker, and musician, if you can find the job where you're still doing your art, well, you're still in the same art form, even if you're not creating, you're giving like this is what we need. Sometimes that's freeing though. As a writer, I used to do a lot of newspaper and magazine article, a lot of freelance stuff, writing copy. I could sit down and write textbooks if I want, and I used to love it though because there was no mind numbing to it. You just sat down and this is what I have to do. You didn't have to put the thought into it, and sometimes those jobs like that can really help because it hones your craft.
Mhm.
For starters, because you're working in a genre or whatever you want to call it, because it's a medium you're familiar with, but you're using it in a way that you wouldn't normally do. So, it hones those skills. You're like, I wouldn't normally be doing this type of writing or this type of music. So you're learning things completely different. And it's really fun to see when people then they're able to make a living though, too. And like
Mhm.
you said, you get a real job. So you get that, the family and stuff are like, oh yeah, he's doing that. He still does this on the side. But
Mhm.
it's always nice to be able to do that because then you're still in the industry that you want to be in too.
Right. Right.
So now you do. I've listened to some of your music too. You're on the heavier side, more on the metal side of stuff. So
Hmm.
obviously, when it comes to like your IMDb credits are 150, 160,
Hmm.
something like that. And obviously, there's like the Little House on the Prairie stuff, but you've got more in like the horror stuff where you're going to get to play more, and it's going to be more along the lines of the other music you create.
Hmm.
Is there a other than Killer Clowns? Is there another project that you did that was almost where you're like, I don't know, where you felt like, yes, this is I'm composing, though this is a score, but God, this could almost just be an album
Right.
on its own. Was there something that really stuck with you that you're almost kind of like, damn, I wish that was just my band instead of, tied to this film?
Right. Well, there are some things that I have no control over. I would have to actually buy back the rights to do. But there was a sequel to the movie The Cell that I worked on
Oh,
that was very very interesting because I was in the middle of moving, and they set me up at Universal Studios in an office that had no windows. Now, I like working, I have to have windows. I have to see outside. I have to be able to see the sky or see a tree or something like that. I cannot be inside a boxed room. And it was a very, very dark, very frightening, very brutal score. And I think it had something to do with the fact that I was locked up. But because that movie was distributed by Sony Pictures, they owned the publishing, and so that music from the sequel to The Cell, I think it was in the early 2000s. I want to say like 2008, 2010, somewhere around there. Hans Zimmer's company called Extreme Music it has it. So they relicense, so that music keeps living on in other projects, which is really cool. And but anyways, that's one. There's I did a western, which fortunately I got to own the rights to the music, so that's on my one of my releases. It's called Warpath. Um, there's a biblical movie that never got released that I was really sad about. I wish I could have like kept that. But gosh, there's so many things. I would have to go down my IMDb and read off like what it goes. Oh, this I'm okay not dealing with this anymore. But usually, what you have to do if you're going to be in the music composing business for media, you have to learn to fall in love with things that you normally wouldn't have thought you would like. So you have to find something in it that obviously, if you're getting called up for some sort of project, someone's made a decision that said, okay, you know what, this particular composer, just like anything else, just like the cinematographer, the editor, this particular person's going to be really good to be on our creative team. So, but that doesn't mean that you personally are gonna like resonate with that project. So you have to develop a skill in finding the best in what you're looking at, so that you can contribute to it. You know, and sometimes I
oh,
surprise myself.
yeah. Well, and exactly, well, like you said, though, you were asked because they saw something in your art.
Right.
And
Right.
you might be looking and going, I don't have done nothing why do they want me? This is not my genre. This is not my style. Obviously, they think it is. And you kind of got to, have a little faith in that too. And you got to, like you said, you got to find a way to love what you're doing, but you also got to make sure you put that little bit of yourself in there because they're obviously expecting it or they wouldn't have asked you in the
Right.
first place. So,
Correct.
so you got to stand, with your own creativity and your own style because it wasn't just your technical ability that they wanted. You can't separate the technical ability from the creative side, the actual creation, especially with projects like that.
Hmm.
So,
And you have to also learn to be, well, obviously a team player, but you also have to be able to work with the variety of personalities. For instance, there was it was like a wake up call. There was one situation that happened to me where the producer calls me up. He says, "I just saw the latest piece of music you did for a particular scene. Can you tell me something why you approached it that way?" And I said, "Well, the director picked out a piece of music. He actually picked out a piece of music that was a bad imitation of a Beethoven piano sonata, and I mean, it wasn't. I mean, he'd be better off if he just actually used the Beethoven piano sonata. So I had to do something like the bad version of the Beethoven piano sonata. And the producer goes, Why did you do that?" I go, "Well," and I was joking around. I says, "Well, the work order said you're gonna. The work order, nothing. You're not hanging wallpaper. You are an artist. You're creating something. Would you have done if he didn't give you any direction? Would you have done that music?" "Oh God, no." "Okay, start all over again. Forget everything he said, and just do something that you want to do that's going to make that scene work." And I did, and he called back, "I love that." And so for me, that was a big wake up call. Says, you are not like someone just delivering furniture, just doing a regular a task. You are doing something creative. That's why we have you, is because you do something creative. And I go, wow, I needed to hear that 50 years ago.
Because you weren't, one of 50 applicants
Right,
for the pizza delivery job. You
right,
were asked to be a part of this. So,
yes,
and
right.
yeah, and I couldn't imagine working with that on us like on a movie set like that. I mean, all I do between my marketing agency and then the podcast, all I work with are creatives, and I absolutely love it. I
Hmm.
absolutely love it. I couldn't imagine working with that many at one time and having to include the egos, which you have to have. You
Yeah,
have to have some ego, or you're not going to survive in the
right.
entertainment industry. And try to balance all that, especially. Oh man, I couldn't even imagine. I would love to hear some of the horror stories sometime.
There's lots of them. There's lots of them.
I can't even imagine. So is it a nice palate cleanser when you get when you're not working on a score and you get to just do your own and like your heavier stuff, the J&M? Like, cuz
Mhm.
I was surprised when I first heard it. I was like, "Ooh, it's not it's you hear composer, you listen to what you've done and you see where that came from, obviously. And
Mhm.
it's really cool. Tell us more about, how long have you been working on the new project, the JM and the heavier stuff like that?
I would say it's coming on 3 years. So it took, um, I would say, a good year to find the people that would be on board with doing what I'm doing. And in the meantime, I was working with my friend Jonathan Padilla on coming up with some tracks. And we thought, well, what's the first thing we should do? And I thought, well, let's do a cover of the Dickies Killer Clowns from Outer Space thing, because that would maybe kind of get our foot in the door, and to do a cover and to kind of get the gears moving. Working with people. This is how we're going to establish our workflow. And so I came up with an arrangement, and I didn't realize that Jonathan also. So we have two different versions of the song. We have like a punk metal version, and then I guess an alt punk metal version or whatever, and then we have a full on metal version of the song, and that's how we got started. And so it's just basically collecting. What I usually do is I come up with a version where I'm kind of playing the piano with a drum beat, not like the drum beat, and sometimes I'll sing and I'll give the song to Maddie, and then Jonathan will add some vocals to it. So you have this thing that you would not play to anybody, that you kind of like locks in the form of the song. And then we start building our tracks, bit by bit. And it becomes kind of like a collage, so to speak. And I try to get everything to be real. God knows I've got enough high end samplers to last me a couple of lifetimes. And I just got kind of sick and tired. I'd rather just have someone play a part. I've had a variety of drum players, Adam Gomez primarily, but there's a Anatoly Shmargun who's in Ukraine, and he's a metal drummer, and he played on one of the Killer Clown tracks, and then there's Jeremy Kling, um, who's out of Florida. He played. Now it's interesting because there's finding like the right drummer or the right guitar player. You have to not only do they have to have the right sound, they have to have the right. They have to be able to want to contribute to the song. And I was really respectful of. I think like six drummers turned me down. And they said, it's just, I'm not feeling it. It's just not my thing. And I really appreciated that they were honest about it. And then it's those guys that said, hey, I want to play that. I can tear that up. You know what I mean? That's what that I really appreciate the honesty, you know. And obviously I didn't have on the covers of the Dickie song, I did not have Adam play on it because I thought, you know what, I should keep that separate, you know. So that's basically been the process. I like to take my time until it's right, but not be over perfection. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes there's really happy accidents. Like on my sequences, when I send something off to a mixer, they'll go, why do you have like 10 measures, 10 bars ahead of the song empty? I go, just in case I got to leave room for something interesting, just in case I have another idea that might work. And you know what? That came in handy. There's a guitar player. His name is Larry Getz, an old time friend of mine from way back when, and he lives in Nashville. He produces a lot of country, and he's just this great innovative guitar player. He's not like a shredder by any stretch of the imaginations, but he comes up with great sounds. And I said, for Do I Know You, I was thinking of starting off the song with the sound effect of an ocean liner to signify, my grandmother coming to America. But I don't know. I think that's too contrived. I don't know. Can you just go through the song and add me some color? And he did these like, I want to say like whale song sounds, that kind of stuff. And first I heard, I go, what the hell? Oh, then I heard it with the track. This is incredible. And it became a very signifying personality of the song, instead of like a guitar wailing guitar riff. It was like this crying sound. And at the very end, he has a sound that sounds like a big ship horn, like woo. So I didn't have to use any contrived sound effects. I was very kind of on the fence of whether to do that. I would not feel right about it. But what he did was absolutely perfect. And you only get that when you really get people on board that believe what you're working on. And they say, you know what, I think I can add something to this or contribute something to this in a way that's going to be meaningful,
Well, yeah, because especially music. Unless you're a one-man band and you're doing it all yourself, it's a collaboration. So
Right.
you might think, oh, I know the perfect drummer. This is who I want to work with. But there might be someone else like, no, 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 please, 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 please. And
Right.
those are the ones that are going to be excited. They're going to hear something that you didn't hear when you were writing. And
Hmm.
those are the ones that are going to help you just hone that and polish it into what you want it to be.
Hmm.
Well, and I remember you posted a video recently, and it struck me as funny because it reminded me of something. Is you were on the keyboard and you're like, "That's a guitar riff," or
Right.
whatever. And I remember some of the comments, people like they were confused, and it reminded me. A client of mine he's a punk band, but he was doing Instagram live and he's playing acoustic, and the comments were like, "I didn't know you could play acoustic," and he's like, "Every song you've ever heard, every punk song started out. Nobody plugs in their amp to
Right.
write a song, and
Right.
it was really funny because it's just you don't think about the other side. People don't know what goes into creating, and so my question is, how often do you write your songs on the keyboard or piano, even though they're not going to have that it's going to be a metal song without any keys in it.
Hmm. Well,
Does that happen pretty often?
it's kind of like my sketch pad. I mean, I have the. Let me see if I can flip the piano, flip this around here. Well, the piano is right here. It's like right off in this corner. I have this piece of wood. I'm reamping a guitar, and so I have this as a reflective surface. Is actually part of the piano, but the piano is right here, and it's got a desk built into it. Like you can kind of see it there, and it's kind of my sketch pad. Sometimes I'll be playing scales, just noodling around, and all of a sudden I come up with this little chord sequence. I go, wow. And I'll write it down, actually, just write the notes here, like, see that. And it's just like to kind of, notating music gets a bad rap. They think, oh, if you notate music, you're boring. It's just a way of remembering what you came up with. There are some people that they're all into the. I can understand. There are people that will write their music in terms of what it looks like on paper. But I just okay, I have the sound. Here are the chords. Okay, so I can come back to it at another time and say, and develop it. And sometimes there'll be on a sheet of paper there'll be like 5 or 6 different ideas. One or two of them may work together and to start something. It's always something to start you off on. Have you ever seen an artist, like a painter? They'll take a sponge and dip it in paint and throw it at the canvas, and it'll make a design. And from that design, that catastrophe, they'll come up with this beautiful piece of artwork. It's the same thing. And just to people out there that get kind of intimidated by music notation, it's not really that hard. It actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it. It's like the pitch, the time that the pitch plays, and the duration that the pitch holds. And that's it. Once you learn like the little basics, you can sit there and, write out your melodies. Doesn't necessarily mean people have to read what you wrote. Is that you have it for yourself so that you can play it later. But I do it on the piano. Sometimes I'll be noodling around on a synthesizer, and the sound of the synth patch itself will inspire some kind of riff or a piece of music. Whether it's like a hardware-based synthesizer, or a desktop synth, or a synth that's comes from a plug-in. So those are my ways of working out ideas. And sometimes I hear something in my head, or think of a lyric idea, and the most important thing you could do is write it down, because you're not going to remember. You may completely forget about it, and 10 minutes afterwards, it's not as fresh as it's supposed to be, as it's coming out of your imagination.
Oh, for sure. And that's any type of art form. I know it's why people get, like you said, that's kind of, they look frowned upon, write the music out like that. But it's no different than if you're a writer and something comes up. It could be a one word or a name, and you're like, I could build a whole story around it. You got to jot that down. Or some screenwriters, like you're writing down like the inflection in someone's voice, or the way the light's going to hit someone that's going to set a scene. It's
Right.
no different. If you don't write that now, you're not going to remember.
And
Or
there are musicians that you wouldn't think are literate musicians that know how to read music, but there are many of them. Like Trent Reznor knows how to write and notate music when he has to. I think he used to play in marching band as well. There's a lot of musicians, and then there are musicians that don't read music at all that make great music. I mean, there's no judgment here about it. I'm just saying that it sometimes being literate in music kind of gets a bad rap, because being literate in music means you're not creative. That's not true, because some of the most expressive, beautiful music ever created, like let's say from the classical era, they notated what was coming out of their head. It wasn't like this, let me just like write random notes. It's a, they came up with something seemingly when for instance, like Beethoven's I want to say it's the second movement to his Eighth Symphony. It's an A minor, and it's basically one note, and there's just chords underneath that change, and it's dum bum 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 dun 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 la 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 dee. Da. It's very simple. It doesn't look exciting on paper. It's not meant to look exciting on paper. It's just this it's not accompaniment, it's not just a chord progression, and it's not melody. It's a combination of the two. And that came out of his soul. That didn't come out from like, let me see what kind of interesting thing I can write. The worst thing I ever heard, and luckily I never fell into this trap, is that hearing film composers say that, oh, I got to write 3 minutes of music today. I'm sitting there staring at a blank piece of paper. Well, what I learned from really good composers, the last thing you want to look at is a blank piece of paper. Just sit there and start playing at the piano. Just start playing, noodling around, and all of a sudden you're going to find literally like 3 notes, like a figure, or like two or three chord sequences that, okay, I can work with that. Let me see. And you just sculpt it to the scene. And it takes practice. It's like everything else. You take, there's tons of seminars and classes on how to compose music for films. Basically, your biggest tool is going to be being creative musically, and that sometimes comes from practice. I think it was Igor Stravinsky said that like composing music is like practicing an instrument. You have to like you do it often enough where it becomes second nature. Coming up with music that works for you and will communicate to an audience.
Well, yeah, I'm a firm believer. I research over research. Probably, I never stop learning. I'm always studying, and people forget a lot that in order to have creative output, you got to have creative input.
Hmm.
Sometimes you need to stop and put down the microphone and put on headphones, or you need to
And
put down the
listen,
pen and
yes.
pick up a book,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
every idea has been done. We're just taking from other people's and it's sparking something. I
Hmm.
mean, it's, so you've got to get input or you can't. I mean, granted, I know people that don't listen to music and are incredible musicians. I don't understand how they do it. It's like a different life form. I don't understand it. But I mean, for most people, you've got to keep bringing it in, because that's what we all need. We all you got to fill the tanks
Hmm.
sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love and time just disappears. Sometimes I stick the headphones on because I want to really intimately listen to something. For instance, like a few weeks ago, I was listening to Michael Jackson's Thriller album, and it's like not only are the songs so well structured and but everything is just placed just right. Everything just like falls into place, and it just takes you. The music does what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to take you to a place, or I'll explore old recordings that I used to listen to when I was a kid that I thought were just like so far out, and I'm realize, gosh, everything's really dry, and it's like so stark, because they just had great ideas that they recorded. I was listening to a song called "Harvester of Eyes" from Blue Oyster Cult, and in my mind's imagination, when I first heard it when I was a young teenager, it just sounded so diverse and like a universe. And now it's like all these great musical ideas, but everything was dry. I'm talking from a perspective. Everything was very dry and stark, and it's what made it work so well. And yeah, I can get lost. There's a Finnish composer. His name is I can't pronounce his first name. I think it's Enuani Rautovara, and he writes this just sparkling, imaginative music that just takes you on a journey. And I can just get lost in his music. Anytime I'm doing knucklehead chores like going through papers or something, I'll put his music on and I can really appreciate it. It makes the time go by so easily. And I would have never discovered that music had I not tuned into other people that's all they do is listening to new music, and so they give their heads up on something to listen to. Now, this composer I'm talking about is no longer alive. He was big in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s. And but his music is every bit as imaginative as anything you'll hear being composed today in that classical music realm.
And speaking of the whole classical musical realm, and let's get back to Killer Clowns a little bit.
Yes.
Recently, well, not that recent, but you kind of took Killer Clowns and the score to a whole new level
Hmm.
by having an orchestra play it with the movie. How did that come about? And is there going to be more? Because I've
Oh,
got to see this live.
okay. Well, that came out because of the fans. I had, for the first time ever, been invited to a convention out here in Burbank, California, and I think it was like one of the anniversaries of Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I don't, frankly, I forgot. There was someone that was working at the Kyoto Brothers production studio that invited me to come. You got to come by. It's the 20th or 25th anniversary of Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I go, oh, really? That's great. Are you guys having a party? No, it's at a convention. I go, what does that? What does that mean? Because to me, a convention is like NAM, National Association of Music Manufacturers, or or NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters. To me, that's a convention. They said, no, it's a convention where fans come, and I learned there are fans that come and get to see things all to do with the horror community, what have you. So there I was. There was a table of a variety. There was not only Killer Clowns, there was other movies, right? And fans would come up and pay like $20 to have a picture signed or something like that, and they walk away. And I thought, they deserve more than that. How about instead of $20 to just get a picture signed and put it in a drawer, they paid $20 to see a concert, you know? And they walk away with an experience. So I said, how fun would it be? Because the music character of Killer Clowns from Outer Space was actually very classical. It was very developmental music. It could easily be performed by an orchestra. So I managed to get the license to do the performance, and I produced a concert at the Ricardo Montalban Theater's a 1,000-seat theater, and the place was full. Some people said, well, I noticed ticket sales aren't that great. I go, listen, if there's one person that shows up, they're going to get a great show, because this show has to go down whether the theater is full or it's empty, because it's all contracted out. It's ready to go. And so on the night of the performance, I took the smallest little dressing room, and the concertmaster, the head violinist, came out and said, "Hey, you got to see this." And I looked at, he goes, and the theater was full. There was a ton of people out there, and I'm going. First thing that came to my mind, I said, "Oh my gosh, I should have made lasagna." Well, all these people here, they're probably hungry. But anyways, so that was a lot of fun, and but since then, the first one was so easy to do. It's the second one. There are so many. Unfortunately, COVID had hit. There's MGM. There's a kind of like I think an 18-month to 24-month period where creatives and branding and marketing people stay. And just when we start developing something, a new team would come across. So I'm working on my fourth or fifth team. There is a very a global music event producing company that loves the idea. It's just a matter of getting the people at MGM Amazon on board where we can actually just do it. But the first one, I don't know how it happened. I guess it was like capturing lightning in a bottle. The first one actually went off without a hitch. It was a 6-month turnaround from the time I had the idea to the time we had the concert, and it was so much fun. everyone there had so much fun. That was the wonderful thing about it, is that people were really enjoying themselves. There was obviously a lot of cosplay, and people stuck around afterwards. We had a Q&A before and after. And so anyways, that was wonderful. And I'm working on bringing that back again.
Well, guys, you sent me the link, and just watching it like on my phone, watching the performance and hearing how freaking excited the crowd was. I mean, I was excited, and this is years later, and I'm sitting
Right.
on my phone that's this
A lot of
big,
energy.
like this, and yeah, the energy and it's the fullness, and like it was the way it was meant to be. Like it was every bit as like one of the big theaters showing Rocky Horror or
Right.
something along those lines. Like it was so cool to witness, even just watching through my phone. It was such a neat experience. I couldn't imagine the amount of fun the people in the crowd had, and they were vocal about it. Like you said, I mean, it was almost fan interaction, and it was really cool to see it. I would love to see it become something like what Rocky Horror is, and having everybody does something at the certain time of the movie, and you having the orchestra play, like it would just be incredible to see. I think it would do really well.
Well, it also helped that the Dickies performed live with the orchestra. That was the big thing. And the quick story behind that is that Leonard Leonard Phillips called me before. He was kind of concerned. We've never played with an orchestra before. And I go, Lenny, you don't have to do anything different. You just play the song like you know the song, like it is on the album. We will follow you. You don't have to. We're not gonna. We don't want. We want. This is the only goal we have, is to make it fun. And that's what I love about punk music, is that it can be so much fun. When you go to another, I got a professional note, please. It was maybe on a tangent. Backing tracks. I love that punk bands don't have backing tracks. They just play. And that's where the energy, because you might hear the song on the album, it sounds a certain way, but when you hear it live, it might be faster. They may do a longer version. And that's what I used to love about seeing bands play live back in the day. I mean, you name it, Deep Purple, Frank Zappa, the Boyster Cult, Kiss, The Who, yes. Their songs didn't sound exactly the same on the album, because you were getting them doing a new vibrant performance every night. And then you really got to appreciate their musicianship. So anyways, they brought a lot to the table with I could not have done without the Dickies there, even with the best orchestra in the world, which we basically had. We had a very fine orchestra playing, like the top tier studio musicians in LA. But if the Dickies weren't there, it wouldn't have that magic.
Well, and I mean, who does? Everybody my age wants to see that tour, anyways, and all of the fans of the movie, of you and the Dickies all want matinees now, anyways. We're freaking old. I don't want to be out till midnight, anyways. Let's
Right.
get it going and do some matinees for all of us old guys.
Yeah, absolutely. All of us old guys. Speak for yourself, sir.
Oh, I am. I
Yeah.
am. All right. So, what do you got coming up this year?
Well, I'm releasing singles like every month, or anywhere 4 to 6 weeks. And I'm finding music that I've had that I really cherished, that I'm releasing on my own, like John Massari, artist. A variety of crazy stuff, like something's coming out next week called Let It Ride, which is like 70s rock meets tone loc. And I did for obscure little movies that never got released, and I still own the rights, so I'm releasing them as my own, remixing them and releasing them. And then the JM project, we're releasing songs about every month. And I'm looking forward to the end of the year to have a volume 1 album with all this music. And I like creating original art for my thumbnails. So we're going to have, what I would like to do is have an album that opens up as an art book as well. It has all the large, 12 by 12s of all the song art in it, and that will be on vinyl, obviously, CD and cassette as well. And so that's what we're aiming for, and it's a lot of work, doing that.
I'm excited about all of those because I didn't know about any of these. And first of all, 70s rock meets Tone Loc. I feel targeted. I mean, you're definitely swinging at Gen X and going to hit with that one. That sounds fucking
Right,
great. I can't wait to hear that. And
right,
as the
right.
marketing guy that loves, like I said, I want all my art in one place, whether it's,
Right.
Guar or a movie like Killer Clowns. I want that. Everything's there. So having I'm just imagining the fold out with the artwork.
Hmm.
Every page is just basically like, oh God, that's gonna be gorgeous. I can't wait to see that. That sounds
Yeah,
really
that's
cool.
gonna be a lot of. I either help create the art, my wife. There's also other artists that help put all that art together, and I have a few. There's a girl named Phoenix Rose that helped me create music for my Missiles of October single.
Thank you very much. As always, like, subscribe, share. Give me some feedback. Like to know what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. Everyone, say thank you to John Massari. And as always, please have fun and be nice to each other. Because if you're not, there's no fucking point. And we will see you next time.